So while I was on the bus, I had a lot of time to think. I wrote to Roy, and I'll have to ask him. I said, Roy, there must be some lesson in this. You'll have to tell me when I get to the house. What am I supposed to learn? And the lesson came right at the end when we finally pulled into the station. And there was this older woman who was sitting at the front. And, you know, you think that everyone's going to, like, run off. That's what I do. But people just got up. It was almost like they were kind of disappointed. We arrived already, you know. So this older woman, she says to the bus driver, she said, "You were just fantastic. Like, you were just fantastic, you know? You're just all right. You know, you didn't get angry at all. You were just calm. We should all be like that." And she's like, "Yeah, nothing to say," right? She's praising the bus driver, you know. And really, she was the one full of, like, all the topic of tonight, the sympathetic joy. She had sympathetic joy, like, as a natural state of being. Because she looked around and she found reasons to find joy because of other people. I was like amazed. I was like, wow, you're just like, you are evidence, you know? You're the proof that this is real. This quality can manifest. And here we have it. And I realized, like, my 3 hours on the bus were for the sake of, like, that 20 seconds getting off the bus. The whole thing. And if I didn't have the time to wait, then I wouldn't probably have heard or paid attention to that exchange, you know. So I really, that was it. We can go now. Yeah. And the other thing I noticed from my own lack of practice was that if you're given a lot of time, you generally don't use it for practice, right? I mean, you try to fill it because you think, like, oh, I have all this time, what am I going to do with it? Instead of just saying, I've been, you know, granted a retreat. Like, I mean, it's been offered to me. Do I receive this offering? I mean, how often are we offered time and we simply refuse it? You know, we refuse it because it wasn't packaged according to our expectations, right? The packaging was like, say, in the supermarket or in the lineup or in the bus. But that was just the packaging. The time was the same. Like, you could be given an afternoon in a monastery, like, oh, retreat, you know, everything is set up for me. Why? Because the box was nice. You know, it came in a nice box, right? But the space inside was exactly the same. You know, the space inside the box is the same as the space you get inside a shopping bag, okay? But we kind of missed the gift because we didn't like the cover. So that was something else I noticed. Like, I have 3 hours. Now, of course, I didn't know I was going to have 3 hours, and that's part of the problem. Right? And like 2/3 of that was saying, you know, how can the 3 hours be less? Like, can we just, like, make it less? You know? So I kind of used up that gift certificate, you know, on junk food. Right? So, yeah. So I kind of wasted my practice and somebody else fulfilled theirs. And luckily I was able to witness that and bring it here a little bit before it's too late. And the other thing about sympathetic joy Mudita, it's called, is one of the immeasurables. They're called immeasurables because they have no measure to them, right? No measure, meaning it can't be used up. Like, you don't have any limit to the amount that you can give because it's actually not something you give. It's pretty much something you realize. That's the one of the aspects of the four immeasurables. What I wanted to focus on tonight was mudita, one that is kind of a bit hard to pin down. It's not as easily defined as the other four, the other three that we know and love. Because they're like, yeah, you know, it's so commonly referred to, metta. Like metta, okay? It's like metta. Let's do a day of metta. But if I were to say, let's do a day of sympathetic joy, mudita, you'd be kind of like, can we do metta? You know? Like, give me something I can hold on to. Yeah. And maybe compassion, okay, if I'm feeling kind of down. But those are the ones that we know and well. You know, metta, may all beings have happiness. And we know it's an immeasurable because it has no limit to it. Because you know that when you wish others happiness, not related to yourself, you're not using up anything in you. It's unlimited. As many people as you see, those are as many that you can wish happiness. It's not a limited quality. So compassion is also, you know, very similar to that. You know, the more suffering in the world, the more we have to, you know, realize that it should not be like it should end. You know, that suffering is, you know, the point of the practice. The end of suffering. You know, the Buddha taught I teach one thing, suffering and the end of suffering. And it sounds like two things, but it's one thing because to fully realize what suffering is, okay, is to know where it comes from. And to know where it comes from is to know at the same time how we can remedy it, right? And that's what the Four Noble Truths are about. You explore the nature of suffering and you at the same time realize how it can be ended. It's all about our self-clinging, our attachments. It's mind-produced. That does not mean pain is mind-produced. Pain is real, you know, but suffering is mind-produced. And we start to distinguish the difference between pain and suffering, and that's where we can really cultivate compassion. Because it's not about necessarily changing the world. We're not going to solve all the problems, but we can work on the mind. Okay, first and foremost, our own understandings. Metta, karuna, you know, love and kindness and compassion. We got those down. And we also skip to the fourth one, which is equanimity. Because that really is mindfulness practice. Equanimity, meaning perceiving, acknowledging, seeing things equally, means keeping a calm attention, a balanced, stable attention with all that you perceive, right? And desisting from the labels of good or bad. So when we experience phenomena, which is basically being alive, you know, then we notice how much we filter it through our likes and dislikes. And by seeing that dynamic happening all the time, coming from our own self-centeredness, which is just a normal thing, okay? We say, okay, that's self-produced, it's not the way it really is. So the suchness, perceiving the world from its point of view, right, not just from my projections, is equanimity. Saying, okay, here it is, all right? And here's the like and dislike as well. And you see that there's a difference between the world and my likes and dislikes. Likes and dislikes are subsequent. They come after perception of world. And we want to just trace it back to the actual perception. In the same way, and you should see the similarity or the parallel with suffering and compassion, is that we can notice the difference between pain and suffering. In the same way, we can notice the difference between like what we perceive in the world and our likes and dislikes. Okay? And that's equanimity. It's saying that there's a world out there that's not, defined by our likes and dislikes, but it exists. And we want to just, connect to that, the suchness. And that's why sometimes in Zen they say, just sitting. Okay, just sitting. Okay, just sit, all right? Just sit. What does that mean? Sit and observe everything that's going on. And sit and observe all your pendulum swing of mind going back and forth between liking and disliking, aversion and attachment. All right, you see that, okay? And just keep sitting, right? Now that leaves the third one, or the one that we haven't, the one that is not given its own retreat, right? Sympathetic joy. Mudita. Here's what the Buddha says. Hero monks, a disciple lets his mind pervade 1/4 of the world with thoughts of unselfish joy, and so the second, and so the third, and so the fourth. And thus the whole wide world, above, below, around, everywhere, and equally, he continues to pervade with a heart of unselfish joy, abundant, grown great, measureless, without hostility or ill will. How does a meditator dwell, pervading in one direction, with his heart imbued with sympathetic gladness? Here, mudita is not only called joy, it's also translated as gladness, right? Because joy sometimes can seem like you need to have this emotion, like kind of this rapture or great happiness or energy, right? Or maybe it's just quiet joy. But joy sometimes in English has a sort of a experience to it, joy. Whereas gladness is more related to someone on the outside. And that's a real important aspect here. That you can, feel joy in your life, but the gladness, you're glad for someone else. Like, I'm really glad you did well. Good for you. And it has nothing to do with me. Can we say that honestly? Yeah, we can. But let's test it. All right? I'll get to the test. So, just as one would be glad on seeing a very dear and beloved person, so one pervades all beings with sympathetic gladness. Thus says the Buddha. Okay. To be pleased, having a sense of gladness, right? You start with a dear one, a loved one. This is what, the parental attitude is kind of key here. And parents generally are really joyful and happy when their children succeed or when they do well. Like, wow, yeah, so good for you. The problem is when the parents identify with the children as like a reflection of them, then not only are they really happy when they succeed, but they're devastated when they don't. You didn't get in to, the Ivy League kindergarten. They exist. Oh, I failed. So you see that it ends up being sort of when there's the funny thing about ordinary unity is that it's self-centered. It's like, you're part of me. But Buddhist unity is, I'm part of you. Right? See, there's a difference there. So in ordinary unity, it's like you identify with your kids because, they're a reflection of you, They're like my progeny. Whereas in the Dharma point of view, we want to kind of let go of our sense of separateness and feel connected to you, so that naturally it's not that your success is a reflection on me, and not even that I'm a reflection of you, but just like we're together in this. We're together in this. Where is this mirrored? Right? Where do we see this, as a kind of the mirror image of this? In compassion practice. Okay? sympathetic joy is the balance to compassion practice. This is where we need to see them as really inseparable, as one practice. How? Well, the talk I gave a couple weeks ago, I don't remember. Maybe it was last week. I don't know. But the bus ride has erased my memory. So I'm really in the now. If you really want to be present, go on a long bus ride. So I think I titled like not how to be overwhelmed or something like that. But I didn't get to actually the point. And that's where it's continued to tonight. How to not be overwhelmed by practicing compassion in the world. Well, luckily, the four immeasurables, the Brahma Viharas, the great qualities, are natural balances to each other. Okay? How? If you are feeling like there's too much suffering for you to deal with, well then what's the balance to suffering? It's joy. It's gladness. It's seeing that, wow, there is like these good things going on. Look at these people like celebrating, happy or succeeding, not just suffering. Right? If you're only practicing identification and hope to alleviate suffering, the world is a dark place. And it is. But not only. That not only is found in sympathetic joy. And that's where sympathetic joy is crucial to practice in tandem with compassion practice. So that you can feel like you won't give up. That there is hope. There is hope. Why? Because there is a lot of good. And there are people, doing well. And we can celebrate that fact and wish them continued goodness. Right? Recognize it. How do we recognize that? How do we find the good in the world and celebrate it honestly? Not as a sort of like, I don't know what. Okay? And as I said also, not as sort of a joyful, self-centered emotion that, yes, it's mine. No, it's not yours. But how can you cultivate as a practice the awareness of good and joy in the world so that your sympathetic neurons can be stimulated, right? Now, these neurons, this brain matter, it works in a sympathetic way. Sympathetic means like, there's these sympathetic strings underneath a sitar, like you have all these, 20, 50, whatever, all these strings. And they actually aren't plucked, but they vibrate in sympathy with the main strings being plucked. Okay? Now that's what happens in our brains as well. This is not a mysterious science. Walk down the street, look at someone, and they smile at you. What happens to your mind? It's not a mystery. You naturally experience the emotion. Right? And how about the opposite? There's hostility or anger. What do you experience? You have to do some work not to fall into it. But luckily for sympathetic joy, you don't have to do the work to separate yourself. You can open yourself to it. And so it's not so much that we're trying to cultivate and create something that's not there. But really it's about letting go of some of our defenses that's blocking it out. I could have just been on my phone, looking at my phone and not listened to this woman, or just said, yeah, come on old lady, I gotta get off the bus. And in a normal state of mind, maybe that's what I would have done. But if you take a moment and you recognize the inner smile that's happening around us, that is sympathetic joy, is to allow your natural sympathetic neurons to be stimulated. You will find that your day changes. Okay, and it's not artificial. It is so biological and natural. Right? It's the way we are made. Okay? Reptiles maybe not, but mammals, yes. So you have the sort of biological condition to experience sympathetic joy and to actually then open it more. You're not trying to create something from nothing. you're trying to open and allow what already is there. The nature of your mind is not only aware, but is sympathetic. And that's an amazing thing. And it's not a mystery. It is just your human nature. Walk down the street and let that be. Really. And you can also create it among others. If you feel good when someone smiles at you, what do you think they feel? When you look at them with care, what do you think they feel? If you soften your gaze, right? And instead of looking with hostility, suspicion, threat, or ignoring, right? Which is what happens in a lot of countries. Like the nature is just to avoid contact because of the mutual suspicion that society then has cultivated, right? What if we look not in terms of, say, sort of personal interest or suspicion or, I don't know what, but rather acknowledging this shared condition of human suffering, and we hope for the best. Wish you well. Looks like you're having a hard time. Maybe I can make it easier just by walking by you with pleasantness. Right? If it's happened to you, don't you think that you can make it happen to others? Right? And that, it seems pretty small, but imagine, hasn't it changed your day? Like, hasn't it changed your view of humans, of human beings, when somebody just smiled at you for no reason? Didn't actually, like, you're in a bad mood or you're just, like, self-centered. And then, for some reason, someone just walked by and they're like, nice. And think, wow, maybe I was wrong. Humans aren't cursed. Maybe they're actually blessed. Maybe it's like, it's good to be alive. Wow. Maybe it doesn't even have to be so big. It can just be something like just a little shift. Okay? Now, multiply that by as many people that you meet in a day, and then they carry it on. And imagine if everyone in this room does that, just for a few people. And then those few people do it for 2 more people. And the law's multiplication. And then in a year, everybody's blissful. Now, of course, it's not guaranteed. But it's probably better than not, isn't it? I mean, think about it. And it's not all mushy either. It's actually just kind of scientific. You'll see a cause-effect relationship. That's what I mean. It's karmic. You will see a cause and effect relationship between your giving some sympathetic joy, okay, and you're feeling better about your life, and other people feeling better around you. But it's a practice, isn't it? It's not something like, oh, maybe it'll happen when I'm in a good mood. It's not about, and this is why I don't like using the word joy, it's not necessarily about what you are feeling. And that's also an important aspect of metta. Metta doesn't mean you feel this love. No. You may not feel any love at all, may not like the person, okay? But you know that as they are like you, flesh and blood, a birth date, hopes and dreams, that they too deserve, and probably would live a much better life if they had real deep happiness. Deep happiness, real happiness, not the surface stuff that we're used to defining our lives by, but essential happiness of knowing who and what you really are, and not seeking always on the outside for it to kill you. Think of that happiness, okay? How do we cultivate it? So as a practice, where do we start? Just walking down smiling at everyone? That'll end after half a day. You'll be like, people will walk crossing the street to get away from me. But they just started thinking, really they stopped talking when I came into the room. What's going on? No, it can't be forced. It can't be totally artificial, right? It has to be a process that is, coherent with your own practice. But where is it actually practiced? As with compassion and loving kindness, where do we start? With our own lives, okay? And what is sympathetic joy in common English terms? It's called appreciation. Appreciation. It's called gratitude. Okay? You want to understand how to practice sympathetic joy, where to start? Choose 5 things right now in your life that arouse deep gratitude. And it can be as simple as having good coffee in the morning. I mean, that's one of my 5. But whatever. Honestly, you will find goods. Let's take 30 seconds and everybody count 5 things that you say, wow, I really appreciate that. Wasn't so hard, was it? Wasn't so hard. No. In fact, I could expand the list to 10 and even 20. You might be pulling at, things, but you'll find them. It doesn't actually matter how small or big is it, right? I mean, you can say something like my parents or my children or my spouse or whatever. I mean, there's like these biggies, okay? But then there's like the small things, like, I'm really glad, like when I turned the key in the car, it actually turned on. I mean, it actually turned on. Didn't have to, and if it didn't, I'd have a real problem. Right? There's these things going on that we can just say thank you. Who are you saying thank you to? Yourself. Okay? Not because you caused it, right? But it's cultivating gratitude as a sort of Zen circle in your life. And the more you arouse it in your mind, awaken it, the more it naturally will come. Just like mindfulness practice. This is a different type of mindfulness. You're being mindful of the goods in your life that can arouse a certain sense of appreciation, gratitude, sympathetic joy. Okay, sympathetic joy, you for your own life. Right? And as I say, it's, a practice we cultivate. Like any cultivation, it takes planting seeds. It takes watering them, and it takes extracting weeds so that they don't, take up that nourishment. This is the Buddha's example of like cultivating something. He uses the organic example. You plant a seed, okay, I'm going to, say thank you. I'm going to appreciate this. I'm going to appreciate this. I'm going to appreciate this. You're planting a seed of further appreciation, okay, because it doesn't end just with that moment. You're cultivating an awareness in your mind to find more things you're grateful for, and less that you are, what would the opposite be? Well, judgmental, critical, right? Think of the nature of the mind, okay? Critical mind, it constricts, it contracts, it is limited. Grateful mind is open, receiving, receptive, okay? Inquisitive. It is observing. Critical mind is narrow mind. It's comparing like 2 things. This is not as good as that, right? And it's cherry picking, lemon picking. It's like picking 2 things to compare. Whereas the grateful mind is not comparing mind. It's just saying this is good because this is good. Why is it good? Because I appreciate it. It's not this sort of metaphysical good. And it's not good because this bell is better than that bell. No, it's just like, I'm glad this is here. I'm glad it's here. Right? And it comes back to that recognition of mindfulness, which is looking at the suchness of life. I see what is, and that's enough. Okay? And that seeing what is, the suchness, from its side, not from my side, is a gateway to appreciation. Not because it's good for me, but because it exists. That's true appreciation. Sympathetic joy, I'm glad for your success. I'm glad you're here. Why? Because you are. Because you did it. Not because it relates to me in any way. Right? So this bell, or this world, or these people, I'm glad you're here. Not because, this relates to me. Because because you are. Right? That's enough. Existence is enough to appreciate. Okay? So, back to the Buddha's example of cultivating, planting seeds. You plant the seed of appreciation, right? Then you need to water it. What does watering mean? It means you need to remind yourself on a daily basis. You can't just say, oh yeah, I appreciated this. I appreciate this bell. It's like every time you ring it, you need to appreciate it. That's the watering of it, right? 72 laborers brought us this food. We should know how it comes to us. That's the Zen chant before we eat. Okay, every time you eat, like you don't have to say a bracha if you don't want to, but you should remember, wow, this is great. I don't have to even like it. I don't have to like it. It doesn't taste so good. But I appreciate that I have food. You can find whatever level to appreciate. It doesn't have to be this big thing. You don't have to fake it. Say, I love it. Again, it's not about liking or loving. It's not about liking or disliking. Gratitude and appreciation is not about you. As crazy as it sounds, okay? Because you are the person who's liking and disliking and judging and criticizing, right? But what if we're not? What if we're just saying, oh, wow, thank you for the water. Good, right? I can think, yeah, maybe I would like it even more if it were, I don't know what, lemonade, right? But as soon as I start comparing and judging, then the suchness, the thusness of this experience has evaporated, has been lost. And that's the opposite of gratitude. Gratitude is the suchness of the existence. Here it is, and that's enough. Glad you're here, right? And when lemonade comes around, you're glad the lemonade's there. But you don't have to like the lemonade because you think how much better it is than plain water. You like it because it's there. And when the water's there, it's good because it's there, right? You appreciate it. So that's the cultivation. And then we water it, meaning we do it as a practice, a daily practice. Don't forget to water your plants. If you do, they will wilt. Okay? The plants are the four immeasurables. The loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy or gladness, and equanimity. You have to water those plants on a daily basis, otherwise they will simply dry up. Okay? And then when you add a lot of water, like, the one time a week when I do it and I'm just going to pour a bucket on it, doesn't help. It's not going to revive it. Okay? You have to do it in moderation, on a daily basis, to cultivate these qualities. Otherwise, doesn't work. What's the other thing we need to do, though, and the Buddha does point out, is taking out the weeds. Removing the weeds that sprout, okay? And what are those weeds? It's the awareness of the conflicting, the afflictive emotions, the judgment and criticism, anger, hatred, and ill will, and selfishness that sprouts up all the time. It starts to suck up that energy of appreciation. Instead, uses that same energy from the soil for self-centeredness. Whereas that energy should be used for cultivating sympathy and, appreciation. And instead, it's like, come on, I got to grow this, whatever, spiny weed of self-centered desire, like whatever it is. Okay? What you do is, as soon as you see that, it's like, you're taking space here. This is not your place. Out. Okay? You have to recognize that it's starting to sprout, though. And that's the mindfulness. The mindfulness practice is you keep on looking at your experience, at your existence, and you see when those weeds of self-centeredness start to sprout. Judgment, discrimination, ill will, prejudice, criticism, okay? All those things, impatience, anger. You see that? Wait a second. This is taking up the energy, the sunlight, and the water, okay? And the nourishment and the minerals of loving kindness, patience, compassion, generosity, wisdom. all of that. Okay? So there are the qualities we want to cultivate, and there are the habits that we want to remove. And the mindfulness allows you to notice the difference among them. And that's why we need to pay attention as much as possible. Okay? This is not just during meditation. This is all the time. Right? Otherwise, we start to fall into our mental habits. What are the, sort of opposites of sympathetic joy? I mean, what's that lovely German term you probably know better than I do, Schadenfreude? Yeah, you're like happy about somebody else's misery. Like, ugh. So common though. It's so common. I mean, why do you think it's not just, like for instance, when there's bad news, sometimes there's like bad news about somebody, and then the news repeats itself over and over and over again, and you can understand that people are now like enjoying the bad news. Like somebody did something bad, and now let's really, dig in. Okay? That happens very much in the media level, right? Okay, just notice that. Like when you're getting some sort of, you don't even feel it as pleasure, it's interest. Okay? You're not going to say, oh, I'm glad and I like it. You're just like interested in reading more about it. I'm learning about this problem. Well, come on, you already know about it. And so that's where like the opposite of sympathetic joy is happening. The other where it happens is, of course, envy and jealousy. Okay? And, you can do this sort of, like, think about something that you really want, you really work hard for, you really want a job, you really want a position, you really want the success. You spend months or years working towards it. Friend calls you up. Great news, they got in. You get an email. I don't want to go into it. But what happens in mind? Like, what is the mind? Can we celebrate without feeling like, whatever, I deserve it more than they do, or why me, why them, not me, or whatever, it's just like, how can we cultivate a sense of, wow, good for you, right? Good for you. Good for you. It's not about me. It's not all about me. I know that we live most of our lives from morning to night thinking about what's going to be good for us. Let's be honest. It's all about us 90% of the time. What am I going to eat? Where am I going to go? What do I have to do? What are my obligations? What do I have to fulfill? Who do I need to talk to? What do I need to buy? What do I need to fix? What do I need to clean? Me. It's all about me, right? Sympathetic joy is giving that a rest. Amazing. What a relief if I can spend a few minutes living my life and I'm not the star. If I'm not the star of the show, and there is no star. Right? There is no star. So that's something that we can cultivate. But we cultivate it first and foremost, strangely enough, in relation to ourselves. Which doesn't make it self-centered. Because again, what you are having gratitude and appreciation for is not about what's good for you, but it's just about what is. About what is. Like, I am grateful that there is this cup here. I'm grateful that there's this pillow here. I'm grateful that there's this room here. I'm grateful that there was a bus. I'm grateful for, and it doesn't mean like I'm happy and joyful. It just means I am acknowledging existence, that is helping and not harming. A lot of things that are helping and not harming. That is sympathetic joy, is the acknowledgement of that. Okay, compassion is acknowledging the harm that's harming and not helping. and wanting to decrease that. Sympathetic joy is acknowledging the helping that's not harming and wanting to celebrate that and acknowledge that. Right? You see that they really go together and they are necessary. Otherwise, if you just have sympathetic joy, you're kind of on a cloud and you're in denial. Right? If you just have compassion, you're going to get depressed pretty soon.
Get what?
Depressed pretty soon. Burned out, maybe. So part of what we want to do when we cultivate it is being more diligent with our mindfulness throughout the day. When is your mind going from openness to judgment? What does that feel like when instead of the smile, it's the frown? Right? What do you see in other people around you? When you see upset, do you react in kind? What does that do to your mind? Or can you transform it as an opportunity to then project gratitude? Yeah, I'm glad you're here and I'm sorry you're having a hard time. You don't need to say anything. You can just have that attitude and they will receive something. So can we take every situation as an opportunity to nourish the seeds of sympathetic joy and compassion and take out the weeds of judgment and self-centeredness, right, in every situation? And that takes a certain amount of diligence, okay, with our mindfulness practice, right? So mindfulness practice, I'm expanding to not just being during sitting, but it really is essentially for the cultivation of these qualities. And to know when you're too far on one and you're getting, here's my mind starting to be self-centered, judgmental, critical for myself or for others. Or a sense of, thanks. Just say that more often, right? Even for no reason. And you'll see that it starts to change your mind physically, okay? It starts to change the way your brain works. Don't take my word on it. Just give it a week and tell me next week what happened, right? 2 cups, I'm very grateful. 2 cups. Here's something else we want to understand with mudita. Sympathetic joy is called immeasurable. Immeasurables can be called unconditional. Like metta, we wish happiness for others in an unconditional way. It doesn't only mean, unconditional means a couple of things. On one hand, it means that we have no limit to the amount that we can give. On the other hand, it means that there's no condition for us to give it, meaning it's not because someone deserves it. They can be a real jerk, right? They can be a mean person or even someone who has caused harm, and we still can offer them compassion and kindness and sympathetic joy, right? I'm happy that you had success, even though I really feel, is it for me to judge and say you didn't deserve it? Even though you don't deserve it, I'm happy for you. It's kind of a contradiction, right? Can I be happy for you by saying you didn't deserve it, but still I'm happy for you? That judgment underneath the happiness, right, is corrosive, it's false. So, when I say it's immeasurable, mudita, sympathetic joy has no limit to it, it's unconditional, is by saying, whatever. It's not for me to judge whether you deserve it or whether I deserve it. It's just for me to appreciate the thusness of this situation and to cultivate some gratitude. I may not be able to change anything, but I will change one thing, and that's how my mind works. I'll be less closed and more open. Okay? And that in itself is worthwhile. So it's immeasurable and unconditional on those 2 levels. Meaning we'll never be limited into how much we can offer it, and it's not for us to decide who deserves it and who doesn't. All do. Okay, all do. Right? There are no conditions. It's unconditional. We give it without any conditions. It's like free offering. Okay, free offering. So, to end, I wanted to read this one real beautiful poem by Shantideva. It's this poem of like a wishing. It's a wishing poem. And I actually have photocopies in my bag that I'm going to give to everybody. Should I go get it? You want to get it? You want me to get it? Or do you want to get it? You want to get it?
Grateful for everything.
Then you get it. That was sincere. In this moment. Alright, so it should be in the bag somewhere. The Shantideva poem, I just thought it's real beautiful. I know the Dalai Lama chants it like almost every day. It's real popular with him. And you'll see why. You know, we can cultivate certain intentions in our lives that are much greater than we thought were possible. And that's one of my intentions of coming here, because I know that we can do that. Right? We can transform our lives so that we're living with an intention that is much less self-centered than we're normally functioning. Right? And it's just about watering that intention as much as frequently as possible. Okay? Yeah, that's it. That's it. You could have also handed out all the English. You just found that binder.
Myself.
You didn't take that binder. Those are much lower level than you used to. Alright. So it actually begins with on the top right, but I had to cut it. So it's may no living creature suffer. May no living creature suffer, commit evil or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled. With a mind weighed down by depression, may the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicine be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. On the top right, top left. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world, until everyone is healed. May I be a guard for all those who are protectorless, a guide for those who journey on the road. For those who wish to go across the water, may I be a boat, a raft, a bridge. For all those ailing in the world, until their every sickness has been healed, may I myself become for them the doctor, nurse, the medicine itself. for as long as space endures, and for as long as living beings remain. Until then, may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world. So this great wish and prayer has guided countless beings throughout the centuries, and it's passed to us today as a true possibility. It is a state of being that is not, beyond. This is the life we can live. Whatever someone needs, may we find gratitude that we can offer something, that we can be, the doctor, nurse, and medicine in some way, even if it's just the medicine is a simple smile or a simple thank you. That sometimes is the greatest cure of all. So, heal well and journey together. So before we spend a couple minutes to end with some silence, are there any comments that someone would like to make? Or anything you'd like to say? Now you keep noble silence.
I have a question about this.
Yeah.
Kind of brought up for me this kind of resistance, like it's like, may I be someone who helps, and like very strong I, like, better than others because I help, but they need help. So.
Yeah. Yep. What's the I doing here? Because it says I quite a lot. And I think the point here is that the I is the skillful means of saying, like, I have a self, let me use it well. Like, I'm going to work with the self. I'm not going to deny it and just like talk in the third person or in the sort of the general. No, I need to actually work somehow, and I work through the means I'm given, and that's by my body, mind, personality, myself. So it's just this functional thing. I think it's because the intention is so pure, right? You're using the I as the medicine. It's simply the tool. Right? And we see the I that way, then it's kind of like, yeah, use it well. It's kind of like the medicine, without seeing it as medicine, will cause harm. So the I, the self, can either be like selfish or giving, right? And it just depends on how we use that tool. A knife can do good things in the kitchen, or it can kill someone, right? How are you going to use the same tool? And that's why I think the Dharma approach to the self is the same way. It's not saying like, don't even consider yourself. No, right? And that's why the gratitude practice, it starts with I. Like, wow, I'm so grateful for what I have received, right? But it's a starting point. So yeah, so use that tool well, for the sake of others.